Wasn't really sure how to start this, so I'm going to tell you how you learned what you learned, because most of the parenting we do is the parenting that we experienced ourselves. That's how we learn to be parents. Some of us decided to do what our parents did because we turned out all right, and some of us decided to do just the opposite, and in many cases neither of those things is going to get us optimal results. And in 2021, we've learned so much more about people and about human nature and about how child development and all kinds of exciting things that we didn't know back when I was raising my children and even with some of my older grandchildren. So when we talk about disrupting generational hurt, and why won't this work? Let's try this one. One of the things that I like to talk to clients about a lot is that purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. When you look back at all the people that came before you and some of the things that they had to go through for us to be here today, we answer to all of them, not just to the immediate family that you have around you or your extended family, but all those generations that came before you and some who went through some horrific things for you to be here today. So when you're talking about generational hurt and adaptive techniques families came up with just to survive, it's our turn now. So we're none of us is responsible for how we were raised, but we're all responsible for what we do with it at this point. So I would like you to consider a purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. What do you want to carry forward? So when we're talking about what influences a family in their home at any point in time, a great deal of it hinges on how the emotions in that atmosphere. Some people are very buoyant, very emotional. Some people are very stoic. That influences and whether or not emotions are accepted. Behavior. Some people's behavior is always considerate, always respectful, always kind, and some people are just the opposite. Cognition. It isn't important that I know all the players on all the teams in Houston, but it's kind of nice if I'm aware that we have teams in Houston and that, and some of the things that go on and where I can be in how I'm using my brain. Personalities. Some people, again, are very outgoing. Some people are not. Character is a huge issue. If you could count on the grown-ups in your life, if you knew that they were there for you, if you felt safe and you could trust them, and honesty was a part of your legacy, that makes a big difference in a home, because if you can't trust the people that you're living with, that sets you in a different position. And if that's I worked with a gypsy at one point, and in his family values were you had to learn to steal. Well, that doesn't work anywhere else but in the gypsy community. But that's a huge character issue. Competency. Some people were never taught how to pay their bills, so you don't know whether their electricity is going to be on. You don't know whether the water is going to be running. You don't know whether the house is going to be clean. Some people aren't competent enough to run their own lives and sometimes children have to pick up the slack or do things that the adults can't do. So self-esteem, self-worth, how you think and feel about yourself and if someone in the family does not think highly of him or herself, or someone thinks too highly of him or herself, that influences everybody else in the family. Social, how social the family was. Some families that's the neighborhood gathering place. That's where everybody comes. Everybody's welcome. Everybody can come. And some please, on the other end of the extreme, some families have the windows boarded up. Temperament of the parents and the child. If you have a highly active child in a sedate family, makes a big difference as to how you perceive the way you grew up. Societal influences, and I'm huge on telling people to be keenly aware of what's going on in our culture. In our culture, the perception that they want to portray of men is that men are stupid. Started in the 60s with the feminist movement, and they watch the commercials and the sitcoms. How are men portrayed? Pretty much they look stupid. Think about the commercials, even the Sonic commercial, the life insurance commercials, the guys always look stupid. And if you have a little boy and that's what he's seeing, that isn't what you want him to believe. I tell my grandsons that not a one of them is going to get away with acting stupid because the culture tells them he is. So you need to be aware of that. And the little girls are being taught through the culture that they're objectified body parts. You know, they can sing all kinds of songs about the body parts of a woman. And when I talk with teenage girls, and that's all that they've been taught, because that's what the culture is teaching them, that has a great influence on how you think and feel about yourself and how the family operates. Same with family position. If you're the first child, my oldest son calls himself my experimental model, because that's exactly what he was. I didn't know what I was doing. He's the one you follow around with the peas on the spoon to make him eat that last bite or the broccoli or whatever. And by the third one, if they eat, they eat. It's no big deal. And the same with the gender of the child. If you're in a family, I was talking with a girl today who was the girl in the family, and her father treated her entirely different than he treated her brother. Well, generationally, that was what he was taught, that boys will be a certain way and girls are a whole other way. And change and loss changes a family. If there was a lot of change and loss when you were growing up, and or a lot of death or illness, if you've ever lived with someone who's chronically ill and the entire family has to revolve around that chronically ill person, and even if the illness is addiction, and that is a disease, and the whole family revolves around that illness, then you know for a fact that there's a lot of pain involved in that. Competence, whether or not you can handle your life. If you grew up in a house where competency wasn't encouraged, wasn't nurtured, wasn't taught, that tells you a great deal about how, when you go back out in the world and you have to fend for yourself, and you have to look for role models outside of your own home to teach you what you wish you could have learned with the people that you grew up with. That has a great deal to do with how you think and feel about your background and who you are today. And we're going to talk about the different kinds of parenting, because this is a huge deal that we pass down from generation to generation. You know, my parents were that way and I turned out okay. Well, yes, but in 2021, there's so many other things that we know now and so many other things that we can incorporate, that there's certain things you might want to look at. Like if you were raised with an authoritarian parent, the rock, the brick, the rigid, controlling, demanding, punitive parent, I got the gold, I rule, do it because I said so. There's very little give and take, and the parent is always right. I'm sorry about that, ignore it. The parent's always right. So there's excessive control by one person or parent, and that parent makes all the decisions, discourages independence. The kids, you know, it's kind of one size fits all. And you know, if we went into Macy's and everything on the rack said one size fits all, none of it fits anybody. So this person discourages independence. That parent's, you know, has all the power. I got the golden eye rule. And they have unrealistic and inappropriate expectations and expect their children to have adult-like responsibilities, like the 4-year-old looking out for the 2-year-old, or even the 8-year-old looking out for the 3-year-old, or the child staying home alone at 6 years old. Ideas, feelings, and emotions are not expressed because they're not allowed. You hear a lot of, you shouldn't feel that way. What are you talking about? You shouldn't feel that way. And little warmth and affection or encouragement and praise, it's not a safe place to be. And all kinds of us were raised in that home. And this is pretty much how the children react. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, if that was the parent, there's a lot of tension and conflict in that family, a lot of rebellion or submission, depending on the child and the child's temperament. You either have a highly rebellious child or a very timid, submissive child. A lot of distrust and hostility toward that parent. There's a power struggle with the parents, power oriented with peers. These are bullies. That parent is a bully. And so the child goes to school because we all have to feel we have power. So that child will go out into the world and recreate that situation so they can put themselves in a position of power. And they can feel powerful, so they can feel good about themselves. This is how bullies are passed down from generation to generation. And if there's a mild-tempered child, that child is withdrawn and very timid normally. And low self-esteem, very fearful. Even if it's a bully, that child, if a child has to bully his or her way through life, that child doesn't feel very good about him or herself. Dependent and difficult making decisions, because you guys that have children know from the time they're 2, they're very definitive about what they like and what they don't like. And if you're offering them choices from the time they're small, like would you like to wear this or this, not big choices, but helping them make decisions. When it comes time for them to make bigger decisions, they'll be in a better position to be able to do that. So helping them learn to make decisions, but in an authoritarian atmosphere, no one else but the leader makes a decision. Well, then the kids can't learn to make decisions. And they frequently reject the parental values and beliefs. And they're sneaky and manipulative, because every human has basic human needs and we all have to get our needs met. And if the atmosphere we grew up in isn't conducive to helping us learn how to do that or do it in a healthy way, we're still going to have to get them met. So there'll be some sneaky and manipulative maneuvers going on in that family so that the kids can get their needs met, whatever they are, and the other adults too, in many cases. There's a higher rate of antisocial behavior from children raised in authoritarian homes. And again, we did that, sorry. And then on the opposite side of that, many parents who grew up in an authoritarian home become permissive parents or marshmallow parents. They avoid the exercise of control and they have inconsistent few rules or guidelines. So again, the kids are out there trying to figure out, wait a minute, what are my boundaries? What can I do? What can I do? And they're overreacting generally to their own too rigid upbringing. And these are the parents that try to be their child's friend or pal. You know, they just want to be the kid's friend. Well, the kid doesn't need friends. The kid is going to have plenty of friends. They need the parent who loves them enough to see to it that they get what they need, including boundaries and guidelines and rules. They're overly engaged with their kids and they substitute material things for time and commitment. I hear several times over the years, I don't know what that kid wants. He's got the newest Game Boy. I don't know. I'm working 2 jobs. He's got those Nikes. Well, the child doesn't want them. Well, they might want them, but what they want is the parent's time and commitment. This parent's often too busy or too distracted, and they feel sorry for the child. That one always puzzles me, that they feel sorry for that child, probably because they know on some level that the kid isn't getting what he or she needs. They do way too much for this child. These are the parents that enable the children and they give in too easily to that child. They lack confidence in that child's abilities. They rescue this child. My child would never do that. I know you guys have seen it where a parent will go up to the school and say, my child wouldn't do that. It's all your fault. When the child needs to experience the consequences, because the earlier they do that. When I was working in the jails with the males, and they would tell me, we would be talking, and I'd tell them, I'm so sorry for all the people that never held you accountable until today. You know, You're still accountable. There are there are consequences to things. There are right ways to do them and there are wrong ways to do them. And if nobody loves you enough to step up alongside you and help you with that, you're kind of on your own. And they'll go in and rescue the child. And this doesn't stop in many cases with the child. When the child becomes an adult, the parent still continues to do that. The more you do for a child that can do for him or herself appropriate, age appropriate things, the more you tell that child they can't do it. And you know how hard it is when they're in that little stage, when they're little and they stand there and they go, no, leave me alone. I do it. I do it. You guys who have kids have heard that. I do it myself, and they're putting their coat on or their shoes on the wrong feet or something like that. And the more the parent steps in and says, oh, here, let me do that for you, the less the child starts to believe he or she actually can do it. So these people have few rules for the children. My garbage can just did that. They have few social rules of mutual consideration and sharing. So how does that child going to learn how to maneuver through life? And very little structure. And children need structure. It can't. When you're little, between 0 and 6, you have 1/3 of your brain capacity. That's all you have to work with. When you're born, you have 20%. By the time you're 3, you're dealing with 30%. And up until about age 6, you're dealing with a third of your brain capacity. You can't manipulate. I mean, they look like they can, but an infant cannot manipulate you. But if a child has certain needs that they have to be met and they're not being met, they're going to figure out a way to get it done. And they need structure. Okay, for this child, the predictions for this child is this child often feels insecure and doesn't feel loved. Those of you who are parents know this is the hardest job you will ever do in your life, and it takes an enormous amount of commitment, a lot of energy, and a lot of hard work. And if no one cares enough about you to look after your best interest and teach you what you need to know, you're going to feel like you're not worth anything. They have little respect for a lower authority, and they're irresponsible. Again, if no one teaches you how you're going to do it. If your parent is irresponsible, you're probably going to be irresponsible. They're self-indulgent and poor or little self-control. They do not understand cause and effect because no one let them learn. They have a low self-concept and they're immature socially and emotionally. Again, you need that grown-up there to guide you. They lack social skills and consideration. If no one teaches you please and thank you, how are you going to learn please and thank you? How are you going to learn? No, you don't barge ahead of everybody if someone doesn't stop you. I watched somebody on the freeway last week roll his window down and throw a whole bunch of garbage on the freeway. Where was that child's parents? Anyway. So, and these kids are literally searching. They're desperate for boundaries, but they have a difficult time adjusting to structure in school because it's foreign to them. And they're very manipulative. Again, if no one's helping you learn healthy ways to get your needs met, how are you going to do that? They also have a high rate of antisocial behavior. The uninvolved or bubble parent, this is a parent that does not engage with the child. They're absent or emotionally unavailable for whatever reason. Sometimes it can be mental illness. Sometimes it's addiction. Sometimes it's the parent's addicted to his or her job. They're just not available to the child. And again, I'm going to throw this in because it's important. People who tell me over and over again, oh yeah, I'm not going to do the hard stuff, but I'm still going to smoke pot. Pot affects the same part of the brain that Alzheimer's does, and it doesn't make any difference what drug you're using to alter your brain. You're not there for the kid. So it looks the same to the kid, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or whatever. It looks the same. You're just not there for them. The child takes over the parental role. This child is literally raising him or herself. The parent is inconsistent and they don't know what they can count on. There's few expectations, rules, or guidelines, very little structure, and a great risk of little or no attachment. There's no one attaching to this child. This child does not have anyone he can feel as he or she is attached to. They're unsure of and question their parents' love for sure, because if you don't care enough to make connection with me, how can I be sure you love me? And that becomes their picture of love. Insecure, frightened, very little self-control, immature social and emotional skills, difficulty getting along and respecting others. Again, if no one's walking alongside that child, regardless of their age, I tell teenagers all the time that they are in that phase where they think they know everything and they're pretty sure you don't know anything. But it's still our job to walk beside them and make sure that when they get in trouble or want to get in trouble, at least we can help them make a better decision. And that's our job. Our job is always to look out for the children's best interest, not their better interest or their good interest, but always their best interest, which is why this is such a hard job. You can't say it's in my child's it's the kid's going to drink outside anyway, so I might as well let him drink at home. No, you don't. And it's the same. The guys used to tell me, oh, my parents taught me how to smoke pot. They said I was going to be smoking anyway, so I might as well smoke with them. And one guy was talking about his friend's mother smoked pot with him, but she wouldn't smoke pot with her son. I said, how'd that feel? He said, like I was a throwaway. Exactly. No, your job is their best interest. These kids, again, seek structure and boundaries, but have difficulty adjusting to them, irresponsible and disorganized for the most part, because again, no one's teaching them. Less willing to live by society's values, for sure. May look to peers as role models. Lots of times I hear that from young people who are in trouble. Nobody else is teaching them, so they're searching for what works and what doesn't, and their peers are willing to teach them. So they'll look to a peer for a role model. They may appear to have lots of independence. No child wants to be that independent. These kids are at a huge risk of being victimized. If perpetrators are scanning the horizon for this kid because he's just out there, and they're at great risk for abuse and neglect, huge rate of antisocial behavior. This is the kind of parent I'm hoping we all want to be, the authoritative parent. It's like a tennis ball. It has some give and take. The adult is clearly in charge. It's firm, but it's loving. The kid knows exactly who's in charge. Clear, well-defined guidelines and flexible boundaries. This does not mean your child is not going to push. It's their job to push against the boundaries to see how far they can go. They need to know where the boundaries are. So they'll push against them to see how serious you are. But there's flexible. The rules in a family are not, the family is not made for the rules in the family. The rules in the family are made for your family to function effectively. High levels of open communication, lots of respect for ideas, feelings, and emotions. There's not a lot of, you shouldn't feel that way. What you mean you feel that way? Why would you think something like that? No, these kids, you talk about it. You teach this child critical thinking. You teach this child to look at things from every angle so that the child can say, I heard at school today about this. Well, what do you think about that? Listen to what did you think? Did you listen to what this person said? Did you listen? How many times have you had an opinion and you listen to somebody else and you go, well, I never thought of it that way. Teach the children critical thinking. Mutual respect and consideration, a lot of teamwork, a lot of give and take in this family. They accept each person's uniqueness. I know some of you may have grown up with somebody, why can't you be more like your sister? Because I'm not my sister. Why can't you be more like your brother? Well, because I'm not my brother. Maybe I don't like to play football. Maybe I do want to play football. Maybe I want to be an art student. And allows for mistakes. I'm a whole lot older than a child, and I have been for quite a while. And I make so many mistakes every day, it's ridiculous, but that's how we all learn. That's how we all grow. And even after we know something, we're still going to make a mistake. And if you can't accept mistakes, you can't accept a human being. So you have to allow for mistakes. It's not the mistake that's important. It's what you do with the mistake. What did you take? What do you take away from it? What you move forward with? Reasonable age and developmentally appropriate expectations and responsibilities. You guys may remember a few years back when a whole bunch of women left their children with an 8-year-old boy. One of the children was 3 months old and the baby died. He killed the baby, not on purpose. Okay. Nothing developmentally appropriate about any of that. And reasonable age and developmentally appropriate expectations and responsibilities. It's important that you know that children under about 6 at least can't lie and can't steal. You know, and I don't know how many times you've heard, don't you lie to me. I can stand anything unless you lie to me. Children with 1/3 of their brain capacity are telling you their version of the truth. You may have been standing there watching them when they weren't responsible for something breaking or falling and breaking, but the first thing they're going to turn around and say is, I didn't do it. Okay. In their mind, that's how they want it to be. That does not mean you don't consecrate it. It just means you say, don't you wish that was the way it was, honey? However, you know, and you always consecrate the behavior, but the best way to teach them how to be a liar is to call them a liar. I had one little boy tell me, I just keep talking till I tell them what they want to hear, then I stop. Okay. All in the whole time he's creating these stories in his head till he's telling the grown-ups what they want to hear. Well, that's not what you want. You want the child to understand, but they can't understand anything outside of their own perspective until they get the second part of their brain functioning. And your 7-year-old's the one that's going to come home with something and you're going to look at it and go, where'd that come from? I didn't buy you that. And that's not how you say it. You say something like, wow, this is nice. I don't remember you having this before. And what it means is the child saw it, and surely you must understand if they want it badly enough, it must be theirs. That's when you go into no, we have to make sure this gets back. Or I found it was under a tree. Or, you know, one kid walked away with someone's cell phone because they set it down on the table and the child picked it up. Well, again, from their perspective, that's not stealing. You said it there. Surely if you must understand that if I want it badly enough, it must be mine. The job of the parent is to make sure it gets back where it belongs and teaching the child, if that happened to you and it was yours, would you like that? Does this make sense? You guys are just sitting there looking at me like, does it?
Yes, okay. It really does, Connie. Thank you.
What? You just gotta let me know. Okay, that's okay. All right. And again, a healthy parent encourages appropriate independence and autonomy. You encourage that child to be independent and autonomous within boundaries. You give the kid clear boundaries. And again, if the kid can't push against the parent, they're going to push against something. And usually that's school. Healthy role modeling. You know, if you make a mistake, you own it. If don't lie in front of your kids. Don't say, the biggest lie parents say is, how are you? Fine. And they're not fine at all. You know, and it doesn't mean you pour out your whole life onto the child. You just say, I'm having a hard time, honey, but I'll be all right. Okay. And a lot of nurturing and affection. Some families are very closed and they don't hug and they don't touch. Humans die for lack of touch. That's why we're losing so many young people to suicide and depression, and older people during the pandemic. No one's getting out.
I want to say this too. Also, the individuals that's in the hospital due to COVID, that's why they're dying off too, because not having that feeling of touch and not being able to communicate with family members.
Great point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's a perfect example. Thank you so much. All right. This child usually is responsible, self-confident, independent, and whatever that is. They're good decision makers. Again, when you're sitting down with a kid and you ask a kid what were they thinking, the answer is they weren't. They weren't thinking, especially if it's a teenager. So you help them go back over their decision matrix and say, let's see where this fell apart. And they're willing to take risks. These kids are willing to take risks for the most part. and they're achievement oriented, and they're emotionally and socially mature. They have close family relationship and remain close to the family values and beliefs over time. They respect themselves usually and others, have a higher self-esteem, they're more secure, fewer fears, more cooperative, friendly, more concerned for others and service oriented, have a lot of leadership skills, but they may appear bossy and aggressive, lack a lower risk of antisocial behavior. That's the parent that I'm hoping we all want to be, is this one, that authoritative parent, the one that is clearly the adult. You look at if you see a child in the store throwing a temper tantrum and the parent throws a temper tantrum right back, and the kid is standing there wondering where the heck the adults are, because there aren't any. So how's a child supposed to know what an adult looks like if there aren't any for them to watch? It's how we learn. Again, purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. What do you want your child to learn? Now, I have a handout, Sujita, that I hope I can get to you on the different parenting styles that maybe you can make sure everybody gets, so that you can look and then you decide. You look at how you were raised and what you didn't like about it, or what you feel like you'd like to do differently, and then you can correct that. Because again, what are we passing forward? Think about what your ancestors went through for you to be here today. You know, some of them, even my own ancestors, I had a great grandmother that she was a widow in Germany. She put her 4 kids on a freighter and brought them to the United States so that they wouldn't be in Hitler's youth group. Now, I don't know I could do that, you know, and none of them spoke English, but she put them all on a boat and brought them over here so she could make sure they weren't Nazis. That's a pretty cool legacy. All right. It takes a tribe to raise a child. You know that thing about the village? This comes from Harvard. They take exception to it takes a village to raise a child. And when you think about it, I hate using this example because it makes me look so stupid, but I live in a neighborhood with about 600 houses. I do not know everybody in my neighborhood, needless to say, but that's about the size of a village. And one night I was driving home and there was a young man coming down the main street, obviously chemically impaired. He was staggering. He was obviously chemically impaired. I didn't know that kid. I wasn't part of his tribe. I didn't stop, and I didn't even call 911. Now, to this day, obviously, I feel guilty about that. It takes 35 interested people to raise a child. And it's important, all of you, if you sit down and you write down on a sheet of paper all the people in your tribe, how they're related to you and what their contribution to your child is, you'll get a clearer picture of if those of you who have made a deliberate attempt to surround your child with the kind of things you want that child to see and learn, like, is school important? Is spirituality important? Is whatever important? And you make sure that you have put your children in line with people, surrounded them with people with like values, you know? So, and in my own children's tribe, there are some family members that I did not want my children to get what they thought was important. You know, we had counter views on what was important and what we wanted for our children. So they were not allowed to be around those people without a chaperone, you know? And so think about who's in your tribe, what their relationship is, and what their contribution is. And as you look it over and the contributions, if there's something more you want for your child, go get that child someone that can help you with that. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. I'm used to doing this in front of people who talk back. All right. This we're going to save till later. So when you talk about it taking a tribe to is anybody willing to share anything about what you think about a tribe? Things like your pediatrician is part of your tribe.
Correct.
Your
I can add to that, like raising like the kids, and then like, so my kids, they participate in sports. So we got the coach is part of the tribe. You have the counselor, the guidance counselor. You have the friends who come and pick them up sometimes from track practice if we can't come pick them up. You have some of the grandparents. So you have a lot of individuals, even the people in the neighborhood, the next door neighbors. So they
You're,
all a part of the tribe.
you are absolutely right. So in your
Um,
neighborhood, that's one of the things when we're talking about raising kids. Years ago in the neighborhood, if you did something wrong and the neighbor cared about you, they would step forward and say, "What are you thinking? I'm going to tell your mother."
Yeah,
You know.
we used to say that was the nosy lady that
Mm-hmm.
was on the corner.
Uh-huh.
But at
Uh-huh.
the
I
same
wanted
time, we
to
used to get the sugar from too.
Yep.
I wanted to speak on the tribe as well. I have three children. I have one on the way, but I realized like over time, having a tribe is great, but like the lack of resources fall over into every area of our lives. So if we lack resources, our tribe would then be a tribe with lacked resources. So those people around you could possibly hurt your children because they don't have the resources to better themselves. So
Yeah,
it's
you're right. So how would you what would you do with that, David?
in that situation, I feel like we have to try our very best to be the change we want to see. So that's why I continue to work on myself so I can attract what I
Good
want and
job.
need.
Good job.
So
Yeah.
I try to be the best me I can be.
Good job. And when you say that lack of resources, like again, one of the things that that I hope parents understand is how important books and libraries are. You know,
Oh yeah.
they're not sit the kid in front of an electronic device and tell them to play or watch the movies. No, you books are so in all the research that they do about teaching children resilience, and that's what you're doing, David, and that's what the gentleman who was talking about the coaches and the team is teaching teamwork, the team is teaching togetherness, the team is, and I hope the coach is not abusive, because we would I would have to be talking to that coach extensively about being abusive, and the coach is teaching them respect. You cannot teach someone respect by demanding that they respect you. I demand you respect me, you understand? Well, if you'd show me what that looks like, maybe I could do it, you know but demanding someone respect you is not teaching a person respect at all. It's just teaching them how to look stupid. And again, when you're talking about the tribe thing, if the television is part of your tribe, and it is for most of us, um, watch the commercials and watch the sitcoms and pay attention to how they portray the man in the family in the commercials. That the guy that with the emu, now tell me that doesn't look stupid. Okay. And who looks stupid? The guy. And almost every one of them. Now that I've made you aware that, I challenge you to watch that. If that's the message your child is getting, that is definitely not what you want them to know.
Honey,
And
oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for what you're saying right now. I think it's really crucial. I know I've seen a hand. Taisha has raised a hand. Maybe you can let us know what you think as well.
oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just didn't want to overtalk anyone. But hi, Miss Clancy. I'm not
Hi.
looking very presentable right now, so that's why I'm not showing myself. However, I appreciate this series, and I appreciate your perspective regarding the tribe. I think it's very important to have a tribe, and I feel like it's very important that your tribe consists exactly of what you said. People who have like morals, values, beliefs, things like that. But oftentimes, like the people that are part of my tribe, for example, my sister, she's one of them. She often, sometimes I'll do like little check-ins with her to kind of see, like, do you think I was too tough? I have a 5-year-old. Okay. So I'm like, do you think I'm too tough on her? Do you think, what do you think? Sometimes she notices things that I don't notice. For example, I mean, even within my daughter, but even with me as a parent, she's like, I noticed that you are not consistent with your discipline, right? Like the consequences. And sometimes it's so easy to just be like, the child is in trouble for just that moment, and then they do something cute, or, whatever, you're trying to get past it. And it's like, no, you have to be consistent with that so they can know that that it's not okay, and that they won't continue to exhibit whatever disapproving behavior again, So
Good
I think
job.
that's
Yeah,
very
good
important.
job. Good job. And that tribe is supporting you. You're very lucky to have her. She can tell you the truth and you'll hear it from her. Good job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And when you're talking about the people in the tribe, some of the people, as I said, in my own family, there were people in my children's tribe that did not share my values on whatever it was I wanted it to be. So I did not leave my children with them unattended. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but you know what I mean. I didn't turn my children. They were relatives who would say, let the kids come and visit. Nope.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Nope.
Sometimes it's those same people who they were a part of your tribe growing up and just their family, right? And so it's like, I don't necessarily agree with, I've had firsthand experiences being a part of your tribe, and I don't really want you a part of my child's tribe.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of that generational hurt. That's I mean, when you look back and you can't trust your children with your own family, pretty much you've already figured out that you want to make changes, and even with when we're talking about building up the resources, like I said, books are so critical. And if your child has an ambition in some area or another, and you want that child to learn about it, any professional worth his or her salt will help your child learn about his or her profession. And as you keep exposing your children to more and more, how does a child know that they might want to be a horticulturist if they don't have a clue what one of those looks like? So any professional worth his or her salt will stop and say, oh yeah, this is what I get to do. Now, depending, of course, not all of them are user friendly, but you can find one that is, or, and again, it takes effort on your part, but for the most part, what you want for your children is what you will surround them with. Yeah. Did you know that most of the people in Silicon Valley that are pushing computers for all of our schools and electronic devices for our schools do not allow their children in schools that use those things? Because our over dependence on electronic devices is training our brains and narrowing, I keep challenging you on you're responsible for the baby's born with 20% of his or her brain capacity, and you guys are responsible for the other 80%. Well, you don't always, you're going to have to be careful to make sure there's plenty of input from all kinds of sources, not just electronics, but the electronics are training our brains. I used to be a reasonably decent speller for the most part. Now I don't even have to think about it. The computer will do it for me. You remember when you had to, I'm sure you guys had that growing up. Mama, how do you spell? Go look it up, which was kind of silly because if you don't know how to spell it, how are you going to look it up? But you know what I'm saying? We had to use our brains. And now the computer does it for us. Does this make sense? I appreciate that gentleman who shared with us that the coach and the counselor are all part of the tribe. Just make sure you write it down and you write their contribution down. And regardless of whether you like it or not, so you can understand what your kids have got in the tribe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Connie, I think you brought up a good point, because some of our families, the people that we work with, and some of us don't have people around us, right? Like, this is challenging me, or for the start, to be intentional about finding a tribe, even if I've nobody. Like, I'm not from here, my whole family is not here.
Yeah,
and some
so
of the people I know don't have family as well.
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
that looking out, and being intentional where we want to find this tribe, I feel like
That's
is
right.
critical part to think about.
Uh-huh. Sure.
And even if we do have family, you know, that's not enough. Like you see 35 interested people, that's a lot of people to be in a tribe. And like, you
Yes,
know, I
it
see
is.
how many
Yeah, it is.
people you put in. There's probably no limit. There's no limit to how many people you can have in a
That's
tribe,
right.
right?
But 35 is in people that you don't mind saying, guess what they did today? Or, you know, he stood for the first time today. Or, and your little girls, you guys probably know about gender-based stupidity. You know, there's volumes written on gender-based stupidity. When little girls turn 14, they turn stupid because they think guys don't like smart girls. Okay. You can have a girl and she'll literally, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the most important things daddies can give their little girls is, am I pretty, daddy? And I always say, yes, you have to say that, but you also have to say, and you're smart, because you don't want them to click that switch that says
Correct.
guys don't like smart girls.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Oh, it's
I
totally
got
wrong.
yeah, you gotta have a smart girl.
Yes, you do. You got to have smart kids,
Correct,
not just the girls. You got to have smart kids. Okay. So yeah, and you know, and in this culture, with all the emphasis put on looks and you know, exterior things and all of that, make sure that they understand that it's that critical thinking is critical. People don't keep just buying into stuff because somebody told them, and that they know where to go get knowledge. I always say you're never wealthier than when you walk in a library. Everything in the world you want to know is in there. Yeah, you got to work to find it, but it's in there, you know. And if the power goes out, you can still read a book outside in the sun. We all know. But you know what I'm saying? Make sure that you are deliberate about what you want your kids to know and see and be exposed to. If your daughter wants to, make sure, and it's the same with your sons, that you find some smart people in a field that they really like and show it to them in real stuff. You know, see that person over there, he or she. My granddaughter comments all the time because I always stop people, policemen and firemen and EMTs, and thank them, because I'm totally dependent on, if I need an EMT, I sure as heck want them to come, you know. And so I always thank them, and I thank the people in the grocery store that were there during the pandemic. And you know, everybody else was hiding in their homes, and these people were, some of them are my age, and they were serving us, and the young kids that were in there. And so thank them for that, because those people are demonstrating work ethic and all kinds of things. If that's what you want your child to know, you're the one that has to teach them.
Connie, can I say something really quick?
Sure.
I have a 30-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter. So every
Spirituality, and then somebody says, our Father who art in heaven, and the only picture, the only father that they know is the one that they lived with. How do you transition that picture of a father to a picture of a loving God? And that's a huge hurdle for a whole lot of people to get past. So pay attention to what you actually learned. This is not, I, this is not for anyone but you. You can share it with anyone you want to, but when you're thinking about what you actually learned from these people, this is what you're bringing to your children. You can't give your kids what you don't have, but you are giving them what you do have. And this is where you got it. What'd you learn from your mother? If you learned from your mom, a lot of people learned how to cook from their moms. You know, I learned how to cook from my mother, or I learned patience. I learned respect. I learned, or I learned that women have to put up with abuse, or I learned that whatever it was you learned from your mother, pay attention, because you're either working to correct it, and you might correct it by overcorrecting, or you're perpetuating the same thing. Grandparents, what did you learn from your grandparents? Lots of times, if the parents don't step in, you know, I used to ask the clients when I was literally working with them in the jails, I'd say, who's praying for you? You know, who prayed you in here? Because a lot of them needed to be there because that's the only place that they can not risk dying. I'd say, who prayed you in here? And they'd usually say, my grandparents. Now, that's really a shame that the parents aren't stepping up and taking that role, but the grandparents, what'd you learn from your grandparents? A lot of times it's unconditional love, you know, because as a grandmother, I was never the one in a big hurry to be a grandparent. But once you're a grandparent, man, Margarita, can you speak to that? Are you a grandmother?
No, ma'am, I'm not a grandmother yet. I told my kids, hold off. I don't want to be a grandmother yet. But my mother, but my mother tells me that the the grandkids are the most
Payback.
precious love
Yes.
because
It's
they know that the children, us the children, are going to leave, but the grandchildren will never leave unconditional. They said they love us, but when it comes
exactly.
to children, grandchildren, they will die for the grandchildren.
Hey, you know, like I said, I wasn't in a big hurry, but once you're a grandmother, it's just amazing. You know, it really is. It's just, and you're right. It's unconditional love. And the part about where my son says, Mom, I can't ever tell you anything the kids are doing because all you do is laugh. Yeah, it's cool. Okay. What'd you learn from your siblings? It's important you know these things. It's absolutely critical that you know what you learned from this group of people. This is how you got, this was your tribe. This is how you got to where you are today. A lot of times people will tell me, I learned how to smoke pot. Oh, good. Not, or whatever. Okay. Just know what you know. Uh, Other family members, like my cousin, you know, my cousin taught me whatever, you know. So understand clearly what these people gave you, because this is who you are. And this is exactly what you're passing forward. This is how you learn what part of the legacy you want to move forward. What'd you learn from your peers? You know, and that can be a whole range of stuff. You know, what'd you learn from school? A lot of times people tell me that I was stupid. I learned I was stupid at school, you know. No, see, then that's, you know, or how do you treat school? Of the teacher, when I worked with the kids in the elementary school, some of the elementary schools, those kids, they start yelling at the kids from down the block. And they're yelling at them the whole time they're walking to school. They're yelling at them when they get on the school ground. They're yelling at them in to get in line, get in the building, tuck your shirt in, tie your shoes, stop talking, don't do this, don't do that. Don't. When the kids were like this, when I would walk in the school in that when that was going on, by the time I got where I was going, I was shaking. What did you learn from school? What did you learn from church? Did you learn that all the righteous people go to church and you know, sometimes that's the most condemning place you can go. So you need to know what you learned from church. Jesus is going to get you. Well, if I'm doing something wrong and he's there, I sure hope he gets me. You know, not gets me, but you know. Okay, what did you learn from church? What did you learn from television? Now, what the kids are watching on TV is sometimes horrifying, you know. So what did you learn? What you know, people, for all that Bill Cosby did in his other life, Bill Cosby on the show that he was on role modeled good parenting. So I wish we could separate that from what he was doing when he wasn't on TV. What did you learn from the music? You know, and listen carefully to what your children are listening to. I walked into the house when my granddaughter was playing Old Town Road. She was 10. She was playing Old Town Road and she said, this is the most popular song in the world. And her dad was standing there and he said, yep, that's the most popular song. And in that song, the guy says, and I know you guys know it, I cheated on my girlfriend. If you don't believe me, ask her. Is that what you want your kids to understand is okay in a relationship? So it's okay for them to listen to it. You just need to do parental guidance. That is not okay cheating on your girlfriend is not okay, you know, but if they hear it long, and I don't know how you guys feel about Cardi B's last song where she's talking about oral sex. Okay, wait, stop. I would stop. I don't want my kids hearing that, you know, so pay attention to what the music is teaching them, what the culture is teaching them. And again, that doesn't mean that you're putting all kind of parental controls on everything. Just make sure you are walking through it with the kids. Having I forgot what the lyrics to that song Cardi B sings are because it was so disgusting. I was like, you know.
Miss Clancy, what? Okay.
See, so you hear it, you listen to, are you listening with the kids?
I'm praying on that one. Pray for me.
Amen, for sure.
Connie,
Yeah.
what I was going to mention is that a lot of our parents, they do not understand, of course, English or some words.
Yeah,
And the kids are just, of course, because their
taking
friend is
advantage
listening.
of it.
I'm sorry, in Spanish, even the Spanish songs, they
Mhm.
are, of course, you're
Oh,
like,
sure. If they're singing in English, they're singing in Spanish if it
and you
sells.
and a lot of parents, but the thing is that a lot of parents, they're like, oh, they're okay, they're listening to music, but you do have to pay attention.
Yep. You have to, again, uh, mm, something as bland, comparatively speaking, as Old Town Road. I cheated on my girlfriend if you don't believe me. No, you know? And anyway, and you remember the song where you don't because most of you are too young. I was driving my daughter to school one day and that the song came on years ago, um, where the lyrics said, every time I see your face I touch myself. And we're riding down the road and I'd not heard it before, and I said, hold it. So she's telling him every time she sees his face she masturbates. Now tell me that's a good message. That's crazy, you know. But the truth is, if that's what the kids are learning and that's what they're hearing, you need to know what's influencing. It's okay to do this. It's okay to do that. It's not okay. Not if you don't want to get in trouble, either personally or collectively. And they're going to do dumb things anyway, but we sure don't want to let them know that that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Mark,
Can I add?
what?
Can I add?
Sure.
Because that applies also to the movies that they watch.
Absolutely.
Because before, the movies, the sitcoms that we watch are, um, what do you call, censored. But because people don't want censorship anymore, even to music, the lyrics of the song, whatever that
Right.
we hear is quite applicable, and the teenager just dive into the tune and everything, it's acceptable to them. That I think right now we parents are shifting into both as a censor authority, that every time we hear those lyrics we have to give them advice and give them the critical thinking that you mentioned a while ago,
Exactly right. Good
including
job, Mom.
the movies that they watch, because there are some obscene words that they absorb based on what they hear, they watch, and then the reaction of the teenagers their age are doing the same thing, like premarital sex and everything. They no longer value those things. There's also cultural shifts from what they see, because right now in Netflix,
They're grateful. You know, because again, I've been in this business long enough to talk to the kids through all those things, you know, and they look back, they can't possibly admit that you're right because that would make them look, you know, whatever. But again, when I told you they're looking for boundaries, none of what they're hearing is in their best interest. And that's always your job, is to point it out. You're not always going to be successful. They're going to make mistakes, but you can't let down your job. Does that make sense? So you have to be there and say, that's not okay.
Agree.
And so that, and when you just brought this up, this is a lead into what do you know who's teaching your child and what your child is learning? What
Oh,
is your child learning about men? And I told you one of the major things they're learning is men are stupid. Okay. No, men are not stupid. I'm sorry. They're not. Okay. What are they learning about women? Are women just bees and hoes? I was working with a group of kids, and this little, they weren't little, they were 15. And two of the boys came to me because one of the boys' girlfriends had been sexually and ethnically harassed in the hallway. And it was a long, drawn out process because the kid didn't want to tell me, and his friend kept making him try to tell me. And when he told me, he let me read the text that she had given him, told him what had happened. And I told her, I can assure you that I said, can I talk to her? And he finally let me talk to her, finally gave me her name. I sent him back to class and she came down. I didn't know what to expect because most of the text was deleted expletives that I would have deleted. And I said, I understand you. She was a darling little 15-year-old, just a beautiful child. And I said that I said, I understand you've been sexually and ethnically harassed by this young man. She said, yes. She was standing there shaking her head. And I told her, I assured her it wouldn't happen again. We talked a little while longer, not with that boy. I said, I assure you that will not happen again with him. And then we talked a few minutes longer. And then at the end, I said, I can assure you he will not do that again. And she said, you're not playing, are you, miss? And I said, not even close. However, in the event another young man does that, I'm going to ask you not to respond in the manner that you responded to him, because in his mind, that justifies everything he said about you. You know, if she's going to come back at him with a bunch of deleted expletives, he's going to think it's good. And she's going like this. She agreed. The next week, she was waiting for me when I got to school. She and one of her little friends were waiting for me. And they said, Miss, would you teach us how to be ladies? And I said, because the culture is teaching you your bees and hoes. And she said, exactly. Okay. So that's on all of us grown-ups for allowing that to happen. We're allowing these incredibly gorgeous little people to think that they're bees and hoes and all kind of other things. So what are they learning about men and women, and who are they learning it from? What are they learning about relationships? One of the saddest things over the last few years is what I hear families say about my family's teaching me how to get out of a bad marriage, not how to be in a healthy relationship. And again, it's absolutely critical that you get out of an abusive relationship, but who's teaching you not to get in it in the first place? I mean, and that's that generational stuff. If you grow up thinking it's perfectly all right to hit somebody or to call somebody a name or to scream at them, that's what your picture of love looks like. So if you're going to change that, it's critical that you do that. What are they learning about character? Is it important to be honest? Is it important to have integrity? I think it is. And what does character look like? What are they learning about family? Where do they put family? I had a family where the uncle cashed in his 401k to bail the 21-year-old out of jail. That is not teaching appropriate family values. That 21-year-old should never expect his uncle to cash in his 401k for doing something that he knew was clearly wrong, because I know the story. What about money? What are they learning about money? Are they learning money grows on trees? Because if it doesn't, you got one. I'd love to have a cutting from it, because I'd love to have that. Are they learning that the value of you have to earn it? And I was appalled to hear that some teenage girl started her own company making slime, and she charges $13 a little container for it. Now, she's a great entrepreneur, but to spend $13 on slime blows me away. And okay, if you think you have to have one because everybody else does, one is fine. But do you understand what I'm saying? No, $13 for a thing of slime is a little beyond ridiculous. And so if you're teaching them about money, you're teaching them that earning it, you know, the value of it. What are they learning about work? They see you get up every morning and go to work when you don't feel well, or it's too hard, or you hate going to work that day and you can't stand the thought of the traffic, but you go anyway because you go to work. You teach them that's what work looks like. You know, hopefully they get to do something that they like. What are they learning about health? You know, are they learning preventative health? Are they learning to take care of themselves? Are they learning proper eating? Are they learning all those things? What are you teaching them about health? And what are they learning? And who are they learning it from? And what are they learning about sex? And who's teaching them? You know, I hear parents say, that's my baby girl. Nothing but the best is my little girl. Is only the best is good enough for my little girl. But that's my little boy. He can go out and sow his wild oats and get all those notches on his belt. And he can, you know, do all that stuff. He can go out there and get his heart broken, and he can do all that. So when you think about it, what you're saying is, my little girl is precious. Only the best is good enough for my little boy, my little girl, but my little boy's the throwaway. No, only the best is good enough for both sex children. Only the best. And so you hold them to the platinum standard. You're always going for platinum. If you come in on gold or silver, we're still in good shape, but you can't come in on aluminum foil. You can't say, well, I know he's going to have sex so I'm going to give him condoms. No, you don't. You don't know that. Okay. Yes, you teach him you teach him what a condom is, but you tell him, you know, unless you want to be associated with that person for the rest of your life, either by his or her disease or his or her child. The youngest child in Harris County paying child support is 12 years old. Okay, what are they learning about respect, and who's teaching them? If someone's screaming at them, telling them you need to respect me, then they're never going to learn respect. You have to demonstrate what respect looks like across the board to everyone in their world. Just like you were saying, Margarita, you teach your children to respect everyone that they come in contact with. They're not responsible for how the person chooses to receive it, but they're only responsible for what you're teaching them to give. Same with religion and spirituality. What are they learning about that? Spirituality is a basic human need. We all have to have spirit. It's part of us. We have to have it, like we drinking water, eating food. It's a basic human need. And if we're not dealing with it deliberately, we're doing it by default. You know, it doesn't matter. You still have a need for spirituality. That's why people go off in those crazy directions like addiction. It's a quest to go beyond themselves. So religion is supposed to point you to spirituality. Religion is not spirituality. That's your own relationship with your higher power. Make sense? So if you're not doing it deliberately, you're not giving it to the kids, that's on you. You're responsible for your own spirituality. No one can do that for you. You're not responsible, again, for how you were raised, but you're 100% responsible for what you do with it as an adult. What you do, what you say, how you act and react is always your choice and responsibility in every instance. And the kids know it, and you do too. So if you make a mistake, and we're going to make fools out of ourselves on a fairly regular basis, hopefully not too often, but it's going to happen, and you're always responsible. If you're screaming at people in other cars and the kids are in the backseat hearing you, that's on you. Does that make sense? Okay. What's important that you want your children to know? How can you make it happen? And where can you get the resources if you don't know? Okay. And Sujita said she wants me to tell you about my agency. I work for this agency.
Yes.
Been around for. Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead, Connie. I was going to say we have to wrap up because it's coming to 7.
Yeah. Okay. We've been around for over 100 years. We have case management services that are above reproach. These people are amazing, and they'll help with filling out forms for like Medicaid, CHIP, everything. You can do that in our office. You don't have to go to a warehouse and get it done. You can come to us, and they can find resources where there aren't any. I was telling her we have resources for people with flood damage. We have financial coaches that can help repair credit, establish credit, apply for a savings account where they match you dollar for dollar, help figure out all kinds of things. We have job coaches that can help with resumes, help with interview skills, and help find jobs. They can do all kinds of amazing things. And we have top-notch therapists. So if what you bring to today from your past is overwhelming, you have an opportunity to come. We work with almost all the insurances, and we also work on a sliding fee scale, and no one is ever turned away. Now we have a waiting list now because COVID has inundated everybody with mental health issues, but you are certainly welcome to come and sort things out and put it in our, you can't say get over it. You can't do that. You have to get through it. And so whatever it is, you can bring it here and put it in our Dempsey dumpster and leave it. Leave the trash here. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does.
Yes, ma'am. And
okay.
Thank you so
Purposeful, thoughtful, deliberate legacy. And thank you very much, you guys, for letting me come and play today.
Yes, absolutely. The pleasure is all ours, Ms. Clancy. Thank you so much for that presentation. We really enjoyed it. We've had a lot of great engagement. I'll give a time for some questions, but before that, I just want